The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
My name is Allen Howell. I'm a member of Revolt Against Plutocracy's core decision-making committee. I'm going to explain information about more hidden support available to just one candidate that you probably haven't heard about before, certainly not on MSNBC or CNN, and the Washington Post and the New York Times have yet to cover what I'm about to explain. In the video above, Victor showed the polling that conveys the inherent leverage Senator Sanders continues to have from the Sanders to Trump swing voters. When unemployment is low, as it is now, it's pretty obvious that the election next year will be very close. How can any candidate defeat an incumbent president with the economic wind at his back? What, in other words, is better than low employment? Senator Sanders is running on a Green New Deal to address climate change. Victor will discuss the need to take action to avert the climate crisis in the next video, but I want to stress economic considerations. The Green New Deal includes a federal job guarantee. That would lead to full employment and much better circumstances for many Americans struggling to get by on 2 to 3 part-time jobs, and it would raise many folks' standard of living. No other candidate is running on an economic platform that would improve on low unemployment. There are millions of people who will not vote for any other Democrat next year than Senator Sanders. While Victor talked about the Sanders to Trump swing voters and the Bernie or bust voters, they are vastly outnumbered by citizens who normally do not vote at all, but who will vote for a social Democrat such as Bernie Sanders. How do I know this? In 2018, French political economist Thomas Piketty published his findings from a study of 70 years of citizen behavior in the United States, England, and France. I reference here a Salon article entitled, "There is hard data to show that a centrist Democrat would be a losing candidate." For someone not acquainted with Piketty's exhaustive research, the argument for a centrist Democrat might sound compelling. If the country has tilted to the right, should we not elect a candidate closer to the middle than to the fringe? If the electorate resembles a left-to-right line and each voter has a bracketed range of acceptability in which they vote, this would make perfect sense. The only problem is it doesn't work like that, as Piketty shows. The reason for this disconnect is that when we nominate centrist Democrats who don't speak to class issues, we end up with a great swath of voters who simply do not vote. Conversely, right-wing candidates who speak to class issues, but who do so by harnessing a false consciousness, that is, blaming immigrants and minorities for capitalism's ills, rather than the capitalists directly, they'll win these same voters who would have voted for a more class-conscious left candidate. Piketty calls this a bifurcated voting situation, meaning many voters will connect either with far-right xenophobic nationalists or left egalitarian internationalists, but perhaps nothing in between. In other words, in order to recapture many of the voters who backed Trump in 2016, the Democrats must nominate someone like Sanders, a self-described democratic socialist. These voters are not just the Sanders to Trump swing voters that Victor described. There are millions of poor and poorly educated voters that Piketty noted will stay home and will not vote at all unless there's a social democrat to support. 100 million eligible Americans did not vote in the 2016 election. Senator Sanders has the potential to motivate millions of politically inactive citizens and defeat Trump because he's a democratic socialist, not in spite of being a democratic socialist. Furthermore, only Senator Sanders has an army of 1 million volunteers canvassing and calling potential supporters to inform them about his progressive agenda. Only Sanders has his own voter database linked to these volunteers with what's called the Burn app. Using that app, these volunteers locate potential supporters, encourage people to get registered to vote, and then contact them to remind them to vote or caucus as the prescribed day approaches. You want to defeat Trump? Biden doesn't have anything like this army. Neither does Senator Warren, Mayor Buttigieg, or Senator Klobuchar. Those establishment candidates will not motivate the Piketty poor to vote for them next year, and if nominated, will not have the backing of those who typically do not vote. Nor will they have the Sanders to Trump swing voters and the Bernie or bust voters that Victor has described. While all polls show the race getting tighter, a number of polls indicate that Biden has a better chance of defeating Trump than does Bernie. That's because the pollsters aren't reaching voters like the first-time Gen Z voters and the Piketty poor non-voters. Look at which candidates consistently fill stadiums: Senator Sanders and President Trump. Only Bernie Sanders and his supporters have the level of enthusiasm needed to match the enthusiasm of the president's loyal supporters. Listen to what Kyle Kulinski says about Sanders' electability addressing the CNBC host Andrew Ross Sorkin, who doesn't believe focus group consultant Frank Luntz's findings that Bernie is more than able to defeat Donald Trump.
Forget won the debate. He couldn't quite believe that Bernie, had a chance at all, even in the election. So watch him struggle with that.
Okay, let's go to the final clip here. We got Bernie Sanders addressing the Trump economy several times on the debate stage last night.
Trump goes around saying the economy is doing great. You know what? Real inflation accounted for wages went up last year 1.1%. That ain't great. Today in America, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. More income and wealth inequality since the 1920s. We need an economy that works for working families.
So there's nothing new there.
Nothing new, but you think he's the winner of the night?
I don't think he's the winner of the night. The LA Times Group, they said he was the winner of the night, and for two reasons. Number one, he had passion. And number two, for the first time, they're starting to see him as having the capability of challenging Donald Trump on the debate stage. And I want to remind you, these are Democratic primary voters, not the center of the country, and obviously none of them voted for Donald Trump. But they now see Bernie Sanders as being able to take the argument directly to Donald Trump, and that's why he's been rising in the California polls, and that's why he won last night.
Frank, but let me ask you,
a lot of these voters were not decided until they watched Bernie in the debate, and that's what moved them. And Frank understands, and Andrew does not understand.
You're obviously polling people in Los Angeles, in California. We know what that state looks like. It seems to me, I don't even think it seems to me, I think it seems to everybody that this election is get won or lost in a handful of swing states in the middle of the country by a handful of independents that have yet to make up their mind. And to the extent...
Okay, that's fair. That's true. These, in this Jacobin magazine article with Megan Day and Matt Karp, Trump wooed and won these Obama voters, the Johns Hopkins authors conclude, with a combination of bandwagon bigotry and economic populism. In 2020, Republicans will surely attempt to fire up the bigotry machine again if Democrats cannot answer with a credible alternative economic agenda, one that spells real change. They are doomed to lose these voters all over again, and probably the election too. Despite his residual popularity among Democrats stemming from the Obama years, now fading fast, Joe Biden cannot deliver this message. Oh, and while we're at it, let's let Cornel West get in his shot, and then we'll go back to Sorkin.
The only way you beat Donald Trump, unbelievable energy, enthusiasm, bringing in new voters, and having solidarity focused on principle. The only candidate who has is Brother Bernie Sanders.
There you go. And that's what Sorkin just can't wrap his mind around.
That you can predict or, through implication, the folks that you were speaking with, what's the real takeaway after last night?
The real takeaway is not who wins in November. It's who gets the Democratic nomination. And I would have said to you, say 30 days ago, that I don't think Bernie Sanders is viable in the 2020 campaign. After listening to these voters in California with more delegates than any other state in the country, I think Bernie Sanders has a good opportunity, good chance to win the primary. And if you win California, you get such a huge share of the delegates.
Right.
Now that Kamala Harris is
So how
out.
do you rank things right now?
Oh, I can't. And I said this to you a week ago.
You can.
Yes, you can. You can rank it.
You can.
You can rank it. Go right ahead. I can rank it. I honestly believe there's about an equal chance at the moment of Bernie and Biden being the nominee. I think that it's overwhelmingly likely, just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, is Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete being like viable, but their chances are quickly fading into oblivion. But I think it's a coin flip right now between Bernie and Biden. Now, I got to give Biden credit because, I mean, he's hanging on. I thought he would have already been out of the lead by now. I did early on. I was telling you guys, there's no way the more he starts talking, the more people are going to dislike him and the more, Bernie will grow a lead. But it's, hey, man, the numbers are clear and he is hanging on. I think a lot of that support really is default support, as I call it, which is just like who's running? Oh, Biden's running. Well, he was the VP under Obama. Sure, Biden. I would support Biden. Why not? I'd vote for him. I think that's like a lot of what his support is. And the numbers show that too, by the way, because Bernie has the highest percentage of people who are set on voting for Bernie. I think the number's like over 70%, which is out of this world. Whereas everybody else is like below 50% for that category. So, but I do think, you have to accept the reality for what it is. And Biden has about a 5-point lead in the average, or maybe a little bit more than a 5-point lead in the average of polls. But I do think that Bernie and Biden have about an equal shot right now of being the nominee, and Mayor Pete and Elizabeth Warren are barely holding on by the skin of their teeth. But you can see they don't want to say that either Bernie's the favorite or Bernie and Biden are tied for the favorite. They don't want to say it. They don't want to say it. I don't know. I don't know what it's like. I cannot tell you the state of the race. I don't know. And you notice there were multiple times there where Aaron Ross Sorkin, like, literally threw the softball down the center of the plate and was like, okay, now I'm going to prep you. Go ahead and give us our corporate spin. He said, well, really, what's the real takeaway here? What's the real takeaway about this race? That's him saying, like, okay, sure, you said your little spiel about Bernie Sanders, but who do you really think is a serious candidate? Klobuchar? Can we go with Klobuchar? To be fair to him, he didn't say Klobuchar, but he's teeing it up for Frank Luntz to be like, well, at the end of the day, obviously, it's not going to be Bernie, and it is going to be one of the corporate candidates. That's what he's doing. He's teeing it up. So he was just waiting for it, and put our spin on it, and then, so here's the message I have for Aaron Ross Sorkin when he says, well, swing states and independents, that's what this race really comes down to. Dude, those are the states that Bernie Sanders does the best around the country. Those are his, like, guaranteed layup states. And yes, I said it. Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders in the Rust Belt, Bernie Sanders is going to destroy him. Because Bernie Sanders is the actual economic populist that Donald Trump just pretended to be. And you think people in that area of the country don't know it? Of course they know it. Obama ran in a semi-populist way, and then Obama abandoned them. Trump ran in a populist way, and then Trump abandoned them. And, you got Bernie Sanders with the track record to back it up, opposing all the trade deals, and being a strong supporter of unions his entire career. Meanwhile, there was a story just the other day, and we're going to cover this later, but U.S. Steel Mill in Detroit is shutting the factory. 1,500 jobs, poof, gone. In an area that already is struggling and was obliterated by the trade deals originally when all the car manufacturers left there. So, and this is Trump, Mr. I'm a populist and I'm going to save the jobs and whatnot. Really? Well, 93,000 jobs were outsourced in your first year as president. That's just your first year. The Carrier factory that you made such a big stink, I'm saving these jobs. Those jobs eventually went overseas as well. So you think these people don't know it? Of course they know it. You think they're just going to, close their eyes and vote for Trump again? No, they feel abandoned by him. They feel betrayed by him. Bernie Sanders does fantastically well in those states. So his concern is actually couldn't be more wrong.
So there you have it. Not only is Bernie going to eat Trump's lunch in the swing states, he's really good at flipping voters in other states, which is what Kyle goes on to say. In an article by Megan Day and Matt Karp, they explain why Sanders is a candidate who can defeat Trump. They don't say he's the only candidate, but they say he is the candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. It reads in part, "The truth is that Democrats genuinely like Bernie. He has the highest favorability rating in the primary field and among Democratic voters who prioritize issues, that is, what a president might actually achieve while in office. Sanders leads the pack. Yet among the Democrats most concerned with beating Trump, Sanders currently trails. A hostile party establishment and an unfriendly media appear to have persuaded many voters that Sanders is too extreme or too far left to win a general election." And we saw that in the treatment in that video that Kyle just showed us. Trump can be beaten, and the way to do it involves winning three key groups of voters in the Rust Belt battlegrounds. First, the Democrats and independents who backed Obama twice before turning to Trump. Second, Obama voters who declined to vote in 2016. And third, the even larger group of Americans who do not typically vote at all. The most detailed study of these decisive swing voters comes from two Johns Hopkins political scientists who recently confirmed what other analysts have understood for a while. Economic anxiety did in fact play a crucial role in the 2016 election. A close look at the American National Election Survey data shows that Obama to Trump swing voters in 2016 were on average more worried about their current financial situation than either Romney-Trump or Obama-Clinton voters. By now, you must be wondering about the independent voters. Will they back a Democratic socialist over an embarrassing, revolting plutocrat? Marist polling of independent voters reported by NPR in July shows that a third said they would definitely vote for the president, up from 1/4. A majority, 54%, say they definitely won't, about the same as last month. Trump will have big money and big corporations behind him, but Senator Sanders will have big enthusiasm and big demands for economic justice behind him in a way that, again, no other Democrat can muster. Victor explains that the Sanders to Trump swing voters alone make Bernie the only candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. Because of Sanders' agenda and his ideology, polling indicates that he actually can defeat Trump next year. If the Democrats nominate a corporate-owned centrist, millions of voters, from the Piketty poor non-voters to the Sanders to Trump swing voters, will not be voting for that candidate in the general election. While it is not certain that Sanders will defeat Trump in the general election, it is certain that any other candidate will be defeated by Trump as long as the economy remains stable.
Revolt Against Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.